Welcome, everyone. Welcome to Women in Advanced Air Mobility and a New Era. We are so pleased to have you join us, and we are so excited about the next hour that we'll spend together exploring advanced air mobility. I'm so excited to start off with a session with Wendy Sukir, and we'll be doing that shortly. My name is Tira Fraser, and I'm joining you today from the stolen, unceded territories of the Musqueam and the Tsawwassen First Nation. And I am a Métis woman, both settler and Indigenous, and an uninvited guest on these stolen lands. I want to acknowledge the lands across the country and wherever you're joining us from today. So I'll invite you to just settle your feet on the ground just for a moment, making a connection with the lands that you're joining from, and invite you to think about the stewards of those lands for thousands and thousands of years, the Indigenous peoples that have stewarded the lands of the blood and the bones of their ancestors, and the hopes and dreams of the children yet to be born. Nice deep breath for everyone. Beautiful. And just taking a moment to acknowledge the territory that you're on. In the chat, you can actually say a quick hello and share with us the lands that you're joining us from. Wonderful. I'd also like to acknowledge the many challenges that we're facing in our world right now, and the wars that are happening, the need for people to come together in peace and harmony and in good relationship. Wonderful. I think it's important for us. We're talking about diversity, equity, inclusion. We're talking about disrupting the entire industry of aviation and aerospace, and thinking about how we can be in a more relational way with one another and with the land, being more connected with ourselves, each other, and the precious sacred lands that we are so blessed to receive from. Wonderful. And I can see in the chat, some folks are sharing where they're joining us from, which is fantastic. Thank you. And with that, to get us started, wonderful. And keep the connections coming in the chat. This is a way for us to connect with each other and all the lands where we are coming from. And with that, I would like to start us off in a great conversation that I'm so excited to have. And I would like to invite Wendy Sukir to join me for a great conversation talking about a new era. What is possible? What is possible in this new era? We have so many opportunities to explore. Beautiful. And
I'm here. The host won't let me turn on my camera.
okay, I'm in the same boat. So I know that we have some incredible folks that are whizzes at technology that are going to help us out here. So both Wendy and I are unable to start our videos. And just bear with us just a moment. And as we do that,
I exist.
oh, excellent. Maybe I exist also. Let me see. Aha, here I am. Wonderful. Great. Hi, Wendy. So good to have you here.
So honored to finally have a one on one with you, Tara, because you certainly have been a trailblazer in so many different ways.
Oh, thank you. What I'd like to do is start off our time together. You know, oftentimes I get introduced and people go through the whole, bio and accomplishments. And I really appreciate the opportunity to introduce myself and to be able to position myself or share who I am in my own way. And so, what I'd like to do is invite you to do just that. Bring yourself into the space, introducing yourself in a way that fits for you today.
Oh, thanks for that. And I should start by saying that I'm joining you from the traditional unceded territory of Mississauga of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, the Chippewa, and the Wendat peoples. And I'm very grateful to everybody on this call for acknowledging that they are settlers for the most part in this land. And I think the work that we do at the Diversity Institute has always had some attention focused on issues related to Indigenous peoples and truth and reconciliation, but I think as a result, in large part of events of recent years, we've really redoubled those efforts and tried to better understand not just issues related to Indigenous women in particular, although we do have a focus on that, but
Mhm.
intersectionality in general and how that impacts women's experience. And I have to say that I started, probably started on the work uh, as a kid because I was the child of a refugee, so I had the
Mm,
that lived experience. But in earnest, I started working on issues around women in technology after the Montreal Massacre because
right.
1989 really, I think, focused attention on a few things: gun control, violence against women, but also the underrepresentation of women in technology. And
Mhm.
maybe people don't know this, but Polytechnique was targeted in part because it was so progressive. Quebec was way ahead of the rest of the country in terms of advancing women in technology, women in engineering. And frankly, I have to say that companies at that time, may not be true today, but at that time, companies like Bombardier, Bell Canada, and so on, headquartered in Quebec, were actually at the head of the pack in terms of hiring and
Mm,
promoting women. So I've been working on issues related to women in technology now for 30 years and more. And, I have to say that I am an abject failure. There are fewer women in computer science today and only marginally more women in engineering than there were when I started this work in early 1990s. So, you know, one of the things that we're really preoccupied at the Diversity Institute is systems approaches, trying to understand why, in spite of all the good intentions and all the
yeah.
rainbow posters and the camps and the astronauts talking to us about STEM, how is it possible that after 30
Yeah.
plus years of
How is
work,
it possible? Why? That was my question as you were talking. Why? And how is this possible?
well, I would argue that it's because, and you would know this from a number of different perspectives,
Mm,
systemic
yeah.
discrimination
Mm-hmm.
is hard to fight
Yeah.
because it's hard to see
Yes.
and it's systemic.
It's
So,
everywhere.
so,
It's in everywhere, in everything.
so one of the critical things in the work that we do is try to understand systems, and that's why
Mm,
I'm really pleased that the
mm,
the advanced air mobility people are really trying to look at the ecosystem
yeah.
and approach this new industry. And I do want to emphasize that while it has its roots in aerospace, there's a huge opportunity because it's greenfield. It is new, so you can rebuild better. You can think about these issues right from the get-go. But I would argue, if you want to drive change, you have to be intentional, you have to have targets, you have to have accountability, and you have to put your money where your mouth is.
Yeah.
And the rainbow posters and the good
Mm,
intentions, frankly, did not really do that. And you also have to be prepared to name the problems. And while I think after the Montreal massacre, people were prepared to name misogyny as an issue,
yeah.
I still remember when Donovan Bailey, the Olympic sprinter, got vilified for talking about anti black racism, for
Yeah.
saying that racism was a problem in Canada. Because, the Canadian story is we're
Oh,
awesome,
we're so
awesome, awesome.
nice. We're so nice. And we don't want to use words like, you know, white supremacy. We don't want to use words that make us feel uncomfortable. But you're right. We have to take the issues and the realities and make them visible. That's what you said, right? Systemically, it's everywhere. But the challenge is that it's hard to see unless you're looking for it. We have to bring that out and have it be visible. You said a couple things that really are resonating for me. Bringing a systems lens approach to everything we do is critical. And from an Indigenous worldview, for those of you who have even heard elders and people who say all my relations, it is the centering of all my relations, or that everything is in relationship. That is systems thinking. I did a master's degree at Royal Roads University in leadership, and one of the first things that we learned about was Peter Senge telling us about systems. I'm like, I'm not listening to Peter Senge about systems. Systems is a foundational Indigenous worldview that everything is connected in relationship with everything else, and that's how we have to look at the challenge and the opportunities that we have before us. And then also, this from a Indigenous worldview, looking at things from an and right, rather than an either or. And it is both, yes, founded in traditional aviation and aerospace, and it's brand new. We can actually take the best of both of those things as we co-create together something, an ecosystem that is possible. And the last thing that is the one of the most important things that you said, I always say, follow the money. Where's the money? Because I think about money as nutrients, whether we're talking about reconciliation, whether we're talking about this industry, whether we're talking about bringing historically, colonially, and intentionally excluded peoples. Where are the nutrients going? Right? Where is the money going? Who's deciding where the money's going? Where is the money going? Who's the money going to? Where are the nutrients flowing? That's going to help us to understand how our systems are going to shift. And so what is the opportunity here as you see it, Wendy? Like I see us in this precious, precious moment of my good friend Vicky Saunders would say, everything's broken. What a wonderful time to be alive, right? So
These are my
right?
Vicky Saunders
I
glasses.
know, and I
You didn't
love
know?
them.
Yes.
Oh, and so we have this real precious opportunity, in from my perspective, in the language we use at Square Air is there's this moment right here. Either it will be rebuilt, the systems will be rebuilt in the exact same way by the exact same people, or we have an opportunity to reimagine, rematriate, and rebuild an ecosystem that centers equity and sustainability. So, what is the opportunity here?
So the I just wanted to add one thing about
Mm-hmm.
where I see also contributions coming from Indigenous people's worldview, and that is
Mm-hmm.
around sustainability, is around
Absolutely.
the long-term perspective on
Mm.
this. Because one of the things that I do think is really, to the extent that I know anything about the new industry, it does seem that sustainability can potentially be very central. And we know
Must be.
that creates massive opportunities. I mean, we're living through, another oil crisis. Who thought we were going to see $2+ a liter
Mm-hmm.
fuel uh, coming coming upon us? So, there's the centering of sustainability and the long-term implications of that has for the environment, etc. Really, really important. But it's also important because, in my mind, it will attract new and different people to
Mm-hmm.
this sector, because we know that women and certainly Indigenous peoples are much more likely to make decisions about where they put their time and effort through a sustainability lens. So I think
Absolutely.
that's a really interesting opportunity. I think as well, there's a chance, and even if you look at the women who are speaking today, only about a half of them are engineers or come out of STEM, right? We've got people who have come at this issue through political science and policy. We have people who have come at
Right.
this issue through finance and business.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure there will be people who come at this issue through consumer behavior and and regulatory frameworks and so on. And one of the big lies in my mind in the whole discussion around technology and technology ecosystems is the lack of distinguishing inventions from innovation.
Mm.
An invention is great, but if nobody uses it, it is not an innovation,
Right.
right? And I've always used AI as an example because we have lots of AI tools. No one's using them.
Mm.
Vaccinations, another example. Inventing a new vaccine, great.
Mm.
It's not an innovation until it's in my arm and I'm immunized.
Right. Yeah.
And so if you start to think more about this as, not a bunch of, guys in a basement building some new cool stuff, but you
Mm-hmm.
think about it as transforming transportation
Mm-hmm.
as we know it, and you start to think about, okay, so what are the pieces that have to come together? Of course we need the technology, and there's lots of amazing stuff that is driving technological change,
Mm-hmm.
but you also need the regulatory frameworks, you need the people using the stuff, you need the user interfaces and if you start to think about building an industry as opposed to creating a new tool, suddenly you'll create spaces for more women, more Indigenous people, more groups that historically have not been in, traditional engineering and so
Because they
on.
can
So
find a
I think
place to
that's an
belong,
opportunity.
right? They can find a place to belong, but the system is formidable. The system is formidable. And as you were talking about, you know, the contributions in many different, we have to come at this at many different ways because, you know, what's at risk if once again women and historically and colonially and intentionally excluded peoples are left behind? What is at risk?
Well, the risk in general that comes from the exclusion of you just look at what we see now with the wage gap, with the underrepresentation of women and others in leadership roles, and so on and so on and so on. And we know that part of that is driven by what we would call occupational segregation,
Mhm.
by the fact that women tend to self select out or be kept out of high value, high growth, technology intensive sectors and tend more to gravitate towards services and so on.
Mhm.
So, that's why if we think that that we are losing, and we are, economic value because of the underemployment and the under earning of
Mhm.
women, of indigenous peoples, of other segments of the population. That's economics 101, pure and simple.
Mhm.
We're also, I think, missing an opportunity to be truly innovative, because if this sector is approached with the same lens
Mhm.
and the same orientation as traditional aerospace,
Yeah. We're going to get the same outcome.
you'll get the same outcome. Exactly.
And and it's so how do we intervene? I think about and again, this is the language that I use, disrupt, decolonize, and decarbonize. So what can we do right now to intervene, to disrupt, to decolonize, to decarbonize? How do we actually bring, I'll be honest, it's been a challenge to bring people into this advanced air mobility conversation, for people to see themselves in this future of technology that is exciting, that inspires the wonder of flight in our young people, that has us walking more softly on Mother Earth. How do we invite people into that and see themselves in this exciting, what I think is such an exciting future for this sector?
So, it's funny because probably we could have a long discussion around your sort of theory of change and ours, but, there are no simple solutions to complex problems.
Of
So,
course.
if
Yeah.
you think about kind of policy level, culture, all of those things, disrupting the idea of who belongs.
Mm-hmm.
We have a See It Be a campaign around entrepreneurship. Same thing, in my view, in this sector. Look at the people who are around the table for the conversation today. Just making sure people see the diversity and the women leading and shaping this. I mean, one of the things that made me apoplectic was, during COVID, women were in the front lines. They were in the front lines in the caring professions. They were most of the public health professionals, etc. But when it came to the discussion of rebuild better, it was all the usual suspects, the white guys from the policy institutes and so on. So you really need to take over the conversation, and I think there's an opportunity to do that. So
Like make space everywhere.
I
Hmm.
think that's key. To the extent that the small, new organizations, associations take a gender and diversity lens and apply it to what they're doing and think about their boards. Porter Airlines, sorry, but last I looked, zero women on their boards. Who flies Porter? Should you consider they have zero women on their board?
Yeah.
I think increasingly investors as well as consumers are looking at organizations and making decisions based on ESGs, their environmental commitments, their diversity commitments, and so on. So the leadership stuff certainly needs to be addressed. We need to think about pipeline in. We need to question whether the only pathways are engineering. And for the engineers, the folks from the industry need to get out to the engineering schools and say, hey, 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 think about doing this, because we have lots of women in biomedical engineering, for example, proportionate to aerospace or civil. So, get in there early and pull women through engineering, and then think about all these other roles. Like maybe you're not an engineer, but oh my goodness, consumer experience, user experience. There are great opportunities, policy, et cetera, et cetera. So I think,
Entrepreneurship. I think about women make, and the statisticians and the researchers in the room will correct me if I'm wrong, but women are making 80% of purchasing decisions. And you made such a great point. So who are we choosing to fly on? Who are we choosing to hold to account around the leadership? Where are the nutrients? Where are they going? And who's making the decisions? Is what needs to be examined. I can't, our time is going by so fast, Wendy. I feel
but
like
I
I,
have to ask you a question because I think
okay.
your experience breaking in as a woman and an Indigenous woman in particular to the industry is really illustrative, I think, of both the barriers that exist and what needs to happen. So, why don't you take the rest of the time we've got together and tell us that story? Because I think it's really important for people to hear.
I'll share a little bit, certainly, and then I'll end with the question to you about what you're most excited about in this advanced air mobility emergence. So, for me, I'll share that I'm Indigenous and I'm settler. I'm hold an enormous amount of privilege, and certainly white passing, and recognize and acknowledge the privilege that offers me and the responsibility that I have with that. But I faced more sexism and racism in the last 6 months than I have probably cumulatively in my lifetime. And I've got a lot of curiosities and questions about that, and am unpacking that myself around what are the contributions to that. But part of it is I didn't always have the courage to disrupt. And I've shared many times that, earlier in my earlier career, I just did whatever I needed to do to fit into that world. But that's where the responsibility lies now. Is it's my job, it's my responsibility now to disrupt the systems, all of the systems that are creating the inequities for those that are at a place in their career where that is more challenging, or where there's more risks or danger. And so, I think what is overcoming the barriers is also choosing when and giving yourself permission when this isn't my job right now. I need to do this in my own way, disrupt in my own way, overcome the barriers in my own way. But I want to see everyone feel a sense of belonging where they are working. And I haven't always been successful at that, creating that in my own spaces. I'm like, okay, that didn't go well. um, and some of that is because of the systems. And then just looking at all the different ways, it's unconscious because it's unconscious. And so having the importance of pulling that in front of us. And it's not always easy, but how we overcome that is by having conversations like this, by uh, being real about what the environment can and does look like, and working together to change it, working together to say no. These systems aren't working for anyone, right? So let's disrupt and dismantle them and rebuild together an ecosystem that serves us and also is in service of the next 7 generations. That's what I see as our responsibility. I have no idea. I can't even remember the question that you asked me, but that's what came out of my essence, out of my being right now. So one last question, just very briefly. What are you most excited about? And then I'm going to hand it over to Tony Drummond. So, what are you most excited about when it comes to advanced air mobility and women? Or
Well, that we're having the conversation now at the beginning, which I think is amazing, that there are so many allies, frankly, men who, especially young men, who see this as key. You know, that for me is really important to see allies, and then just to see the number of impressive women around the table who are driving change. You know, like I said, I'm a failure. I've been doing this stuff for a long time, and it's only really been in the last couple of years that I've started to feel like, you know, maybe before before I die, we will see substantive movement. But I do think the events of the last couple of years have really highlighted inequality in a way that was not previously understood. And if I were picking one thing that I think will be transformative, frankly, national child care. Like, gotta say, recognizing the burden of unpaid work by women is one of the reasons Quebec has been ahead of the rest of Canada, at least when it comes to gender. And I think that could make a huge difference for women in the workforce, women in leadership, and that will have incredible spillover effects in the tech sector as well.
Beautiful. And our young people, right? Our young people, our young people have me so hopeful about the future, and bringing them into all the spaces and all the decision making. Thank you, Wendy, for a beautiful conversation. I can't wait for the next conversation. And thank you so much for being here, for sharing your time, and for sharing your stories and such incredible, precious wisdom. And with that, I'm going to pass it to Tony Drummond.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon or good morning. Guess we're getting some technical difficulties worked out.
You look good and sound good, Tony. Everything is working
Great.
here.
Excellent. Everyone, my name is Tony Drummond, and I am the CEO of Global Aerial Management Group. And I am also a partner at Prestige Air Group. Prestige Air Group is a traditional aerospace company, a Part 135, Part 91 aerospace company. And Global Aerial Management Group is an unmanned AAM UAS company. So I want to start off by saying, I know we don't have a lot of time, but I'm really inspired just by the last panel and the fireside chat of listening to the amount of passion that's gone into the work behind all of this. I am a professional myself for 25 years in this segment. I've only ever in my entire career worked in general aviation up until 2 years ago. So I've witnessed firsthand the biases. I've lived the biases that everyone else here has lived as well. And I have been experiencing some really wonderful, really exciting sides of the new transportation wave of the future, if you will. And then I'm also starting to pick up, as the lady said in the last fireside chat, I'm starting to pick up some repetitive behaviors that could definitely be problematic for us in the future as we start to try to really diversify the new industry. So before I introduce our first panelist, I wanted to add a couple of just segments just to kind of add into what was said on the last panel. I have a couple of really important things that I want to bring forward. One of them for me has been working through bias. We talked about in the last panel, in the last fireside chat of what we do as women and as people that are experiencing bias, not just women, anyone who's experiencing bias. How do we move past it? I want to just say that owning the discomfort of where we sit is the number one thing that we need to do for change. We can't talk about change without owning the actual discomfort of what it brings forward. And I just want to bring one thing forward as well. The The concept of bias and of toxic masculinity, most of us know that that's generational. Most of us know that that's born from home. So it's not that we can fight that very easily. But I definitely feel that there are lots of ways that we can come together. And one of them is to change what we're doing within the workplace. So I'm going to use an example here that most of us can relate to. I have 6 brothers. My father said to my brothers on a regular basis, "You got beat by a girl?" That is such a toxic statement that is inbred within our society. Don't get beat by a girl. It's that type of thing that causes bias on so many different levels. So as we move into what we can do moving into AAM and how we can create a more inclusive workforce, there are lots of things that need to be tackled from the beginning. I'm really excited to hear some of the statistics that are about to come out and integrate those into how we can change the future. I have ideas, I have papers all over the place of things we can do. And I'm sure many of you do, and this is not the first conversation we're gonna have about this, but the ideas have to do with our youth. They have to do with not bringing youth into a toxic workplace and encouraging creative thought. Diversity equals creative thought, which equals progress. So with that, I would like to invite up Adrienne Lindgren, and she's going to speak to us about some of the statistics that she's put together. So Adrienne, come on up.
Hey, Tony, good to see you. Thanks everyone for facilitating this dialogue this morning. Thanks to CAAM for hosting and for giving us the opportunity to talk about an important topic. So I think we can start with, I think one statistic that I always like to point to, because I think there's an overarching question always of why do we need more women within, and insert any industry really, but I think aviation you see it acutely with, less than 20% of women holding C-suite roles, and just 3%, holding CEO roles across top 100 aviation organizations. And so the one statistic I always like to sort of point to, and it's been documented in a number of ways, including, I think somewhat most recently by a McKinsey study, but finding that the, top quartile for gender diversity on executive teams were 25% more likely to have above average returns and profitability in the 4th quartile, right? And that's gone up year over year as people have expanded gender diversity on their executive team. So I bring this up to say, I think that we sometimes talk about diversity as a sort of an aspirational goal, as something that is cultural, not necessarily a fundamental contributor to the bottom line. And I think it's really important to highlight the fact that balance in gender, balance and diversity across the board in general tends to help the bottom line of organizations, and I think helps them reach their customer bases, right? I think especially as you look at AAM, advanced air mobility, and the effort to sort of really, we've increased accessibility to aviation services dramatically over the last 40 years. But as we seek to really bring that into cities, into different environments where they haven't traditionally been, aviation as a sector, we're going to have to really rely on expanding the type of users. When you look at who uses small aircraft services today, it's not a particularly diverse group. And I think that through workforce cultivation, it's one way that you can reach sort of raising the visibility of aviation as a household name, as sort of a household brand that people want to rely on as a day-to-day transportation service. And so I think there's a couple of different ways that this can be framed where we don't necessarily just put it in the bucket of cultural goals for an organization, but something that really contributes to the cultivation of the right consumers, of increasing access to consumers, and at the same time increasing the fundamental performance and the sustainability financially and otherwise, and health of different organizations across both historic and traditional aviation, but also those new aviation opportunities that are coming up, through the provision of new types of powertrains, et cetera. So I'll pause there, but those are two that I like to particularly highlight.
That's excellent, Adrienne. I agree with you 100%. I have really felt that for instance, my daughter just graduated college, and I noticed there was a bunch of new females, very, very diverse workforce, not just females graduating with diversity degrees and sustainability degrees. That's something that obviously wasn't available when I was in college. It wasn't available. So there is a lot of effort being put into what we're teaching the upcoming youth. And so I feel that there's a great opportunity to overlap that with what we're doing in our individual segments, bringing in diverse socioeconomic and also all different types of people that need to come in and shake it up a little, because obviously we need the creative thought process. So I like where you're going with that.
The only other thing I'll just say is I do agree sort of with the mom factor that was brought up in the last panel. I think, I'm at a stage in my career where that's a consideration that I'm having, and it's really a tremendous amount of anxiety, right? That one shouldn't feel so pressured. It shouldn't be such an anxious part of your life to start having to think about whether or not you're coming to a life inflection point or a career inflection point, and do you have to choose one or the other? And does one impact the other so significantly that it shuts off the road? And I think you see that in a lot of the data that shows, where these inflection points take place within women's decisions around trying to continue to advance into the later stage of their career versus potentially exiting and going to something that's more accommodating.
I agree 100%. I'd like to bring up, if anyone else wants to come up on the stage, they can, or we can just go right to Miss Marlene Deals. If you'd like to come on up and add some commentary.
Oh, thank you.
That would be lovely, because I think this is a perfect time for you to come up and introduce yourself, working for the Diversity Development Network.
No, thank you so much, ladies. So I'm Marlene Conway Deals, and I'm the president and founder of the Diversity Development Network of Canada. And this was formed in July 20, just in the middle of COVID. And what we really are, our differentiator as a Canadian nonprofit, is that we're focusing on infrastructure and supports that can be used by other diverse groups, industry, academia, government agencies, individuals, to really help connect and catalyze change and opportunity. So in listening to all of the conversations this morning, it's been very, very interesting. And, there's an awful lot of information that talks about gender balance. And when you first say the word diversity, most people think that it's gender balance. And when companies set their goals of gender and diversity, they think that it's strictly a matter of having more women, which is absolutely not correct. And diversity is so much more than gender. It's also ethnicity. It's also religious beliefs and all of the culture that you're bringing with you. So, we're not going to wave a magic wand and have all of these issues that people have been highlighting this morning solved overnight. But what we obviously have here is a collective care to make change and to be more aware and to be more inclusive. So when you think about it, there's really 3 opportunities and 3 drivers to retention. So we can go out and we can attract all kinds of people to this industry by being more inclusive and more interesting. But how the company treats you is very important. How you're paid is very important. But where the real rubber meets the road is how you're treated on the shop floor or in the office environment. If you're made to feel respected and valued and your opinions are valued, that is really important. If you're made to feel ridiculed and excluded, you're not staying. So when we think about this new opportunity for this sector, which is so exciting, it's like Star Wars and Star Trek culminating into reality, when for many consumers, they still don't believe that this is going to happen. However, there's a huge amount of industry and momentum to show that it's really going to happen. And I have some interesting numbers here, really, really quickly, to just see where we are. Everyone recognizes that there's a gender imbalance and an ethnic imbalance. If I point really quickly to the Boeing Global Diversity Report from November 21, it clearly shows that between 68 and 86% in ethnicity between white and all other ethnic groups is held by all positions, is held across the board by white. If you look at gender, it's very similar. It's 70 to 84% of men to women in all positions. And the highest percentages are on the board of directors, to Wendy's point earlier about the Porter Airlines. So it's really important that we start making accessibility and opportunities for all of these other groups. Because if you look at the McKinsey 2019 report on productivity and profitability, when you have diversity and inclusion, it's between on a gender basis, it's a game changer of a positive 25%. And when you look at it from an ethnicity perspective, it's up to 35%. So if you're driving more profits and more productivity, which is where the money goes, by having all these great new ideas and innovation, that's really important. And then the last thing I'm going to say really quickly, we're super stoked. I worked in collaboration with Women in Drones and 3P Tech out of the United States to establish the United States DEI benchmark in AAM and UAS sectors. In 3 weeks, we had 1,081 responses. It was a very in-depth report. I have a really great summary if anyone's interested. In April 18th, we released a 125-page report. But out of that, I think that the most important thing is that 94.1% of all respondents want to participate actively in ongoing committees. So that's a little unruly. You have to break it down into different sections, but it shows engagement. They want to participate to understand best practices, to identify real initiatives that could be beneficial to all of these groups to really make change. So I'm really excited about that because the change has to happen at the employer level. I think that the C-suite is often unsure of what to do in order to be more inclusive, and they don't want to make a mistake. So it's really important that we as a group work together to identify these opportunities and initiatives, and that will make change. So I have more numbers, but I'm going to stop there.
Thank you so much, Marlene. I actually personally contributed to that study last year, and I'm anxiously awaiting the results of it. I haven't gone through it in great detail, so thank you. Would anyone else like to step up to the stage to present their statistics as to what you've gathered? I know everyone gathered individually, so these are such amazing, really great numbers. I'm writing them down as we go. It's encouraging.
I'll step up. So Oksana Bardagula, I'm a vice president at Oliver Wyman. Just a brief, Oliver Wyman is the management consulting firm, and we have a large aviation practice providing everything from strategy work to technical services. And Lindsay's with me, and we'll kind of tag team together here. But what we wanted to share with you is that last year we partnered with the International Aviation Women's Association because they were working with the FAA and Congress to help identify solutions, less about, although there was a piece of it that was around the attraction and retention, we worked for them to understand how to advance women in leadership in aviation. Because there's an issue, there's not only an issue about attracting and retaining them, but there's also, it hits this plateau where we're seeing less and less women move into the C-suite. So what we wanted to do today with you is just share with you some of those findings and potentially even some of the solutions that we think may be powerful. I think one of the first findings that we had is that what we call a push versus pull environment. And that is, I know everyone on this panel understands that women in general experience many more negative and experiences and microaggressions. And what we also found out is even the ones that experience positive ones, as they start to move up in their career, those positive ones actually decline at the latter part of their careers, versus for men, as they move up into their careers, they get much more positive encouragement. And actually, what I said, this creates the push and pull, is that 31% of women that have been in our industry have considered leaving the industry because they are being pushed out of our industry because of all this microaggression that they're feeling, versus men are typically being pulled out of the industry because they're looking for either more money or more job satisfaction. So that was a very important statistic that kind of made us understand that you have to make inclusive leadership a must in your organization. And we so strongly believe that just like there are other goals that are being tracked and somehow also being part of the the compensation sector, we should start considering, how do I make inclusion and diversity part of the compensation sector for my leaders? So that was the first one. And then the second one I wanted to touch upon is sponsorship. And women, and everybody's heard this, women are constantly mentored and they perhaps even coached. But it comes to sponsorship, which means that somebody's willing to stick their neck out in their career for us. Women are less sponsored than men. And in our survey, 60% of the women have never had a sponsor in their career. And yet, every woman that has reached a C-level or a P&L level has said that sponsorship has been the number one thing that has helped her get there. And so the other thing that we're very much encouraging is that the company should make intentional sponsorships a must. And that may mean that you intentionally bring a man forward to sponsor a woman, because you need that. There's just not enough women to sponsor all the women. So I'm going to stop a little bit because I'd love for Lindsay to speak about a couple other items. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Oksana. So I'm Lindsay. I'm also from Oliver Wyman, and I partnered with Oksana on this study. And to kind of pick up where Oksana left off, and I think Marlene touches a little bit on what you were mentioning as well, is one of the super interesting findings that we had in this study as well was there was a very different perception of actually what the most effective initiatives are to help support women as they continue up through an organization. So we kind of broke down what are the key things that help drive leadership and help you progress in your career. And male respondents and female respondents, or identifying respondents, they responded very differently. And what was the most impactful, or what the male respondents assumed was most impactful for women to succeed was not what the female identifying respondents selected. And so it kind of speaks to the fact that there are champions in the industry, and there are male allies who would like to continue to see this as a priority, but because maybe their female identifying colleagues aren't in that conversation, they may be investing in the wrong thing, or something that they could focus their energy on something else that may help drive greater success across kind of the folks that they would like this to impact. So one of the key solutions that we identified as well is making sure that in these conversations of how do we want to move forward, or what initiatives do we want to put in place, or how do we want to drive this forward, making sure that there is representation across the board of both the people who may need to help implement or help champion this initiative, but also those that this will affect, and that folks are trying to help and move forward to make sure that the things that are being pushed forward are the right things and going to be the most impactful.
That's excellent. Thank you for those statistics.
Yeah, I just wanted to add one more thing that Lindsay and I wanted to share, and that is that we should think about the one item that our industry has done very successfully in, and that is safety. When we had doubled down on safety because it was a must in our industry. And so we strongly feel that if our industry took the same focus when it came to inclusion and diversity, we would be successful. And that means you share statistics across companies. You make this one of the most important things for that industry. And we should use what we did with safety that we've done so successfully as kind of our maybe, what's the word I'm looking for? Almost like the path that we'd walk, the roadmap for us. So thank you again.
Thank you, Oksana. I actually will bring up Sonia Boskovic. And before I do that, I wanted to just add that I am the poster child for your study. As a woman in aerospace, I related directly to everything emotionally and professionally as a C-level now, the challenges. So thank you guys so much for that study. And ladies, I'd love for you to share that as well if you haven't already on the chat. So welcome, Sonia.
Thank you, Tony. And my name is Sonia Boskovic. I'm Associate Dean at Aerospace Campus at British Columbia Institute of Technology. And I'm respectfully acknowledge that I'm uninvited, guest on unceded territory of Coast Salish people, Musqueam, Tsleil-Waututh, and Squamish. And I'm very thankful that they allow me to work and live and play here. I'm privileged because I'm a white woman, but I'm unprivileged because I'm, as Wendy, I'm a refugee from Bosnia, survived the war, and highly educated women in the technical area. My background is in mechanical engineering. I hold 2 PhDs, which never is good, when you're around, men. But I want to just share that with all statistics, 5% of pilots, 3%, in a CEO, 4% in mechanics. Developing the thick skin is something that we need to do. But we need to also collaborate. We need to collaborate among, ourselves. We need to collaborate with the men in order to bring them to a level of awareness that we are existing and we are capable to do the job. And I don't know if I failed. Probably I did, because I've been 4 years at the role of associate dean. That's a leadership role in education in an aerospace campus, where in 50 years they never had women in a leadership role. So I'm breaking that, and it took me 4 years to get a little bit of what I need, and I think we need trust. We need to establish the trust. We need to increase our visibility. I'm a big woman, so I can actually increase my visibility. And social norms, we need to say that this is not right. And break that, be kind, and not call it racism or not call it sexism. There are names for that. And then if we say not to be mad, not to be angry, because when we're on a level of angriness, then conversation is not going on. So we need that conversation and, beat the battle, with the knowledge and the capability. And in my language, we have a saying that the calm water are shaping the stones. So, stay calm, keep going, never give up. And to support that, I think we have great examples where in a leadership role, the number of women are increasing. Yes, unfortunately, they're white. So that has to be said too. Like in British Columbia Aviation Council, out of 15 board members, we have 6 women. That's 40%. Not bad. But they're all white. So we need to do something about that. And on a level of advanced air mobility, such a great idea, such a great technology. How to bring it? It's a change. It's a huge change. And every change, people are just resisting immediately because you're trying to take them from their comfortable zone. And 4 years ago, we started with a huge idea and picture. We're going to bring it, we're going to fly it, and realize it doesn't work like that. So let's bring small, things, and we're making the small steps, at least in our academical world. So we're trying to collaborate with our partners in industry to at least bring awareness of that technology and prepare the logistic, let's say, for eVTOLs with the helijet and great person, Daniel Sitnam, man on all sides, and put some eco-avionics, put a little piece of our past or before the things, and saying this is a good thing for the aviation. This is good for industry. Bring the young people on board with the saying green, sustainable. And it's not all perfect, but small steps might actually make a difference, because we are then making them. If we constantly saying we cannot make it, it's not gonna change. So small steps are really necessity. We are experiencing a lot of issues. Government talking about, yes, we want the green technology, but they're not want to fund the things. So we need to bridge that piece. The regulatory body, very stiff in our area in aviation. Absolutely, safety is an issue, but new technology doesn't mean not being safe. So we can do it. And the proof is, look at what's happening in Edmonton Airport. They're using drones, for different things. So it's possible. And use the examples, and definitely obstacle availability of talent. We need to keep on that. And I don't have an answer. I'm just in education. I really don't. We're trying our best. We're trying everything possible, going, like I said, presenting the things, being active. It's still small steps. Maybe we should be happy with the small steps. Like I said, 50 years, no one on this campus was in the role of a woman. For 4 years, I had people not talking to me at all, my mechanics. I'm not existing. It hurts, right? It does hurt.
Yeah,
but,
I've been where you
energy.
are. So thank you so much for being so honest and open and sharing that story. I think it resonates with every single one of us here. And especially with me, I know what that feeling of exclusion from being at the top and fear. And like you said, owning the discomfort and learning how to live in it. So with that, we're going to close our session. We're going to close our panel. I'm going to pass it on to Manassas. And I would like to thank every single person on this board, on this panel here, for joining us today. It was really informative to me. I'm looking forward to going through the notes and reading the studies. And thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Good morning and good afternoon to the folks who are on the West Coast. East Coast, sorry. So my name is Manasa, and before I get started with the second panel round, thank you, Tony, and to all the panelists for sharing your stories and for that great discussion. Most importantly, I think thank you for creating a safe space today where everybody can come in and share their thoughts as well. I was reading some of the chat messages, and there are so many of us who can relate to what was discussed today. We will now pivot to discuss what are some of the opportunities that we see today and in the future for this new era in aviation. So I'll start by introducing myself. My name is Manasa Srinivas, and I'm the manager and the head of System Safety and Reliability Engineering Organization at WISC. And as a foreign national, minority, and women of color, DI topic is something that is very close to my heart. In my experience, and something that I think Sonia also mentioned, the most difficult part of establishing DI initiatives is trying to be patient. It's going to take time, and we're going to need to have a lot of empathy in dealing with these kind of initiatives. We are all on different journeys, we are all on different paths, and each person has different needs. And as we start working together, we will probably start to realize that what works for one side, one region, one person does not work for another. So there's really no one size fits all kind of a solution when it comes to DEIs. Organizations will need to do more work to personalize the employee experience while also being fair to everybody else, which is a really difficult thing to achieve. So with having said that, I would like to invite our panelists to share some of their thoughts on what they're seeing within their organizations today and as a whole within the industry as well to drive some of these DI initiatives. So I'd like to start by inviting Alexi to share some of her thoughts.
Yes. Hi, everyone. So thank you, Masana, for the introduction. So my name is Alexi Cote. I'm a lawyer by training, but I'm also doing some business development in the Advanced Air Mobility Group at CAE. I also did my MBA and studied in international law, human rights. I'm actually co-chairing and co-leading the Professional Women's Network at CAE for the last 3 years now. So really trying to, I guess, address that gender gap, and might as well start in the aviation sector since there's a challenge there. So we started a lot of initiatives at CAE and having, I guess, our leadership empowering us to do so. So I'm really a lot involved in all the D&I activities, mainly around women, and introducing some development program, raising awareness. So I'm really glad to be on that panel. And I think there's great opportunities for advanced air mobility, since, it's a clean sheet, let's say, industry. So it's really, I guess, our job. And I'm really happy to be discussing with all of you today on how we can tackle this from the get-go. So happy to be here with you today.
Thanks, Alexi. Do you want to get us started with some of your thoughts on DEI and some future opportunities that you see within your organization and probably the industry as a whole?
Yes, definitely. Thank you. So actually, CAA has been really involved in, bringing women in the aviation industry by having a lot of initiatives internally, like I was mentioning, the Employee Resource Group. We have the Professional Women's Network, but also Indigenous people, LIFT, which is Women in STEMs. We also have other employee resource groups. So we're really, I guess the leadership is really putting this as top priority, which is, I think, one key element when we're in an industry or in a company, is having our leadership identifying this as a priority, but also have specific objectives. It empowers employee right to actually do something about it. But also externally, CAA has been really involved in putting initiatives around women in flight, which is punchership. So really to put women, and I think we were mentioning there's only 5% of pilots worldwide that are women. And if we're talking about Black women, for example, it's even less, right? So Women in Flight was really made for, sponsor women, but it's also to bring ambassadors to this industry, because one of, I guess, an important aspect is having role models in every industry. But here, having those, I guess, women in flight and following them and accompanying them, I guess, all the way there with mentors and development program, coaching, it's really important also to show, other women around that it's possible, and that there's actually great opportunities there. For the advanced air mobility, I think we're definitely also going to do the same thing, but it's important also that we develop our training program and everything from the get-go. So yes, scholarships, but also having role models, I think, in the leaderships. And we can see here today that there's great, woman leader already, and I'm sure this is attracting already a lot of people, but just having those role models and making sure that, we have development program, coaching as well, mentoring along the way. I think this is key for the advanced air mobility to bring, diversity and women at the table since the beginning.
Thank you for that, Alexi, and I completely agree. Having role models, mentors is such an important initiative that we as women engineers or women in this space can take on. I think the reason why I'm in a leadership position is also because of a mentor where I didn't see opportunity to push myself. My mentors were the one who actually pushed me and encouraged me and also recommended for a lot of leadership positions that I got to be a part of so far in my journey. Thank you for that. Marsha, would you like to introduce yourself and share your thoughts?
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Marsha. I am the Community Outreach Coordinator at Flight Crowd, and we are looking at the public engagement and the social perception of the future of flight with the general public and with young people. So what you guys are all talking about getting young people involved, that is what we are doing. Is the short summary of it. I myself personally, I'm actually a student at university studying aerospace engineering. So it's interesting for me to see, I guess, two perspectives from it, where I myself, I'm going out and doing these outreach activities with other students, school students, primary school students, and getting them excited about this future industry, whilst at the same time, I get the opportunity to also be motivated and inspired by such amazing women and people such as the people on this panel. So a huge thank you.
Thank you, Marsha. Do you want to share anything else?
Just to say that the importance of bringing young people is such an so important in that DEI aspect of things, because we are here. We are passionate, we are keen to learn, and we already appreciate how much people of different backgrounds, diversity of thought, the importance of that is within this future space. And to get young people involved, have our voices heard, is what will bring us to that next step, really, of making this an inclusive space for everyone.
Thank you, Masha. I completely agree. I think 10 years ago, when I stepped into this industry, we didn't have as many panel discussions or initiatives that we could probably execute to see how we can encourage more women in aviation, or with within any industry. I think now, thanks to organizers, thanks to people before us who brought attention to the much needed issues that is ongoing within the aviation industry and just in general, we have been, I think I can call myself as being fortunate to have to have experienced that and to have a lot of opportunities open up for me personally. And I'm really honored and humbled to also extend the same fight, and make sure that the opportunities for the younger generation who are joining this industry is well represented, and they also have more support than we did back in our days. So thank you for sharing your thoughts, Marsha. Liz, do you want to introduce yourself and share your thoughts as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll start by acknowledging that I'm an uninvited guest on the unceded traditional territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. My name is Liz. I'm very excited and honored to be here chatting with you all today. I am a faculty member at BCIT, so I work with Sonia. She's actually been a terrific role model for me over the past couple of years. I've been in the industry for about a decade in a variety of roles, a lot in operations, briefly as a pilot as well. Have my MBA and have done some project management and things like that before coming to BCIT. It's been an amazing journey in this industry. I've made some fantastic connections, and I think everyone's been, talking about the importance of having mentorships and having people you can really reach out to. And I think I've been really lucky that I've had some really great people, and especially women, throughout my kind of journey in aviation. But there still certainly are struggles, and I can only imagine how those struggles could be further compounded if you were in a less privileged situation than I am. I recognize I am white. I come from a family that was able to help support me through my flight training and things like that. So, I recognize I've enjoyed a lot of privilege. I'm, excited to hear from my students and lots of young people wanting to get into the industry. I think there are so many fantastic things, and obviously we have a long way to go as far as diversity, equity, and being sort of as inclusive as possible goes. But I think we are slowly making steps. Some people had great points about how these things take time, and we do need to be patient, as challenging as that is. I think it's also, it's something that I like to sort of remind people of as well, is the fact that some people, particularly in the kind of area of aviation where I operate, a lot of people think about careers being, pilots or AMEs, maybe flight attendants, and those are sort of the only things that come to mind. And I think, especially as we're encouraging more young people, and especially more diversity, more women to get into the industry, it's important to kind of keep in mind there are other roles. So I always try and share that with people. You don't have to be, a pilot or a flight attendant. Those are not the only options in the industry. And I think, many women struggle more than men due to traditional gender roles in terms of, finding that kind of work-life balance. Maybe there's more work at home that they're responsible for, childcare, those sorts of things. And that can make it really challenging if you do want one of those careers like an aircraft mechanic where you're working night shifts, or as a pilot where you're, away for 15 nights a month and you don't know your schedule till the week before. But there are so many amazing career paths within aviation, even flying options that can provide amazing work-life balance. And so I don't want people to be discouraged because they think, I have these commitments at home, and I can't get into that industry. And a lot of those kind of work-life balance challenges may be due to society's pressures that they put on women, and that's something that I think we should absolutely be working on changing. But again, it's going to take a long time. So I always encourage people to explore options, talk with people. There are options like flying float planes where you're home every night. There are options like many of us here in sort of more business roles or education, where you can still be a really active participant in the industry, and get your foot in the door and work your way up up to more, management, more kind of senior roles in the industry without having to, really struggle as much as you might if you were, away half the month. So I really like to kind of encourage students and people interested in the industry to keep that in mind. Again, I hope that one day we're going to have a much more kind of diverse group of people in aviation. I think we will get there, but it'll take time. So we got to do what we can and chip away at it slowly.
Thank you, Liz. I think you made a great point that there is no just, one sector of job that you can aim at within aviation. And I think with the pandemic, the way we work has also changed for the better. And I think, with so many companies going remote now, there's more opportunities for people who are, placed elsewhere or who cannot come into work, for a 9-to-5 job. They have the flexibility of working from home and, probably also have the luxury of, deciding the times that they want to be available for, to work as well. So I think that's a really good point that you mentioned there. Thank you, Liz. Robin? Hi.
Okay. There we go. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So sorry, I'm beaming in actually from the airport. I just landed. I was planning on being on a little bit earlier, but I'm super excited to be here. Thank you for having me. And it's such a delight and an honor to join all these powerhouses of these women that are in all aspects of the aviation industry. So at this point in my career, I'm the director of an aviation program, Vermont Technical College, which is a professional pilot technology degree, but we also just were approved for a maintenance degree as well, which is super exciting. I've been an airline pilot, corporate pilot, cargo pilot, flight instructor, still a flight instructor, and now I find myself leading in this college. So I think that if I had my biggest contribution, I would say right now, is actually to stay in academia. So many of my colleagues have gone back to industry. Flying airplanes is a lot of fun, and it's a great job. And I loved every minute of being a corporate pilot, cargo pilot, airline pilot. And academia is right now at a huge threshold that we're just leaping off into space of what comes next. And it puts us all in these leadership positions, wearing a lot of hats. That's the reason I'm sitting on the floor at the airport. But it also puts us in a position to make substantial change. And so a few of the things that we're doing that I think are exciting is partnerships, and we started a chapter, a Women in Aviation chapter here in Vermont. It's the only one, and it's the closest one for New England as well. And what that did for us is we realized that a lot of our professional women in aviation were very siloed, and we didn't have any way to sort of connect with each other. And so we created this, and we did one press release, and I got calls from the Vermont Army Guard. Hey, can my mechanics come over? I got calls from the F-35 Guard. Hey, I've got women over here in the tech, and they don't have anybody to kind of connect with. Can they come over? I got calls from captains of airline pilots saying, I have twin girls. I really want to get them involved and have this rubbing elbows thing. So that was really a cool thing, and I think it's a small thing, but wow, the connections that we made from that were really fantastic. I was really excited to go to the Women in Aviation conference because I was in the session where the FAA task force released their recommendations for really the next 10, 20 years of what we can do to increase not only women in aviation, but diversity in aviation, and what we've been doing wrong and what we can start doing right. And it's a pretty substantial list. It's very comprehensive. I really feel, as a person that's tried to gather this data myself for years and years and years, that our data has been so skewed, and forgive me if people have already said this, but because we got data from ALPA, Airline Pilots Association, but it was only from our union folks. We got data from the FAA, but I'm an airline transport pilot and I'm not flying as an airline pilot. I skew the data. We got, we did some of our own college outreach and things. So we never really were seeing it. And what we got from this data is we know we're flatlining. So the numbers of people have increased, but the percentage of people is not increasing. And what do we need to do? What work do we have to do here? And I really believe that part of this big thing is a money thing. And we have to change the face of our training. And when we do that and it becomes something that people can afford and they can jump into, we will start seeing a bigger volume of people that we can then help mentor and support and rise up into whatever those areas of aviation that people want to be interested in. We're starting to see a lot more all the way down to kindergarten level of you can be this in STEM, and it's fabulous. It's super exciting. Washington, D.C. holds the biggest STEM festival. They had to shut it down for COVID, of course, but it's coming back. It sees 400,000 kids walk through the doors over 5 days. And the entry fee, $5. Everybody can come. And there are a ton of people, professors, astronauts. They brought a penguin from the South Pole. These are and these are things that when our young people, and we reach a lot of people, see women and diverse people in these roles, it stops being a thing anymore. And now it just becomes a pathway. How can we open up those pathways to really make them accessible for everyone? So that's really my passion right now is opening up those pathways for accessibility to everybody.
Thank you for sharing your thoughts, Robin. I have a follow-up question. So we talked a little bit about what we're seeing currently and, how we are encouraging each other to be a part of this initiative. Do you have any suggestions or, words of wisdom for, let's say, if an organization currently is not thinking about DEI, or if they do not have groups or support system within the organization? It could be a school, it could be, a company, it could be within aviation, any sector within aviation. What are your recommendation for making sure that we push the leadership or the teachers or whoever it is to start thinking about DEI? Because if we don't bring that problem, saying that, hey, I think we are lacking this within the company, within this university, how do we bring focus to what's missing currently?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I've just been on a college tour with my daughter. So I've been running around to all these different campuses. So I've really gotten to see a pretty nice cross section because I'm fortunate enough to have a student that is very dedicated to academics. And so my viewpoint of the college scene, at least, because that's my biggest intercept right now, is that people are open to the conversation. There's no one that's not open to the conversation that I have interfaced with, but the energy and the time, because so many people have lost funding, so much in academia has lost funding, and there's not enough staff, there's not enough people to follow through with a good initiative. So I'm seeing more people in that place of, yeah, we really want to do something, but this person that was doing it, they started it and then they kind of fell to the wayside. So I think regaining that energy, and it starts really with our students, because our students have that energy and they're awesome and they are capable of bringing people in, right? So if leadership supports and students give energy, and then we go back to industry sector and say, we just need a little bit of money, just a little bit to get this off the ground. I think that we can start those conversations and keep them moving, right? Because we don't want flags. We don't want, yes, we love this and we put this banner over here. It's not enough. We need real follow through.
Yeah.
Because follow through is what creates change.
Yeah. Thank you, Robin. Some great points there. Unfortunately, that's the time. That ends our panel discussion. Thank you for all the panelists for sharing your thoughts and such inspirational stories and discussion today. So now I'll pass it on to Tiara for some closing comments. Thanks, everyone.
Wow, what an amazing conversation. And I shared some thoughts in the chat, and I'll share it with you now, and then I'm going to end us in a good way with a poem. But I kept hearing about this and so much rich wisdom was shared, and the plethora of ways that we can approach with a systems lens change in our industry, creating a sense of belonging, reimagining, rematriating, and rebuilding a ecosystem that centers equity and sustainability. And I just kept hearing that throughout everything. Yes, we can be patient and we can demand change. We can have thick skin and we can refuse that narrative. We can keep the conversation open with language that keeps the privileged comfortable so that we can keep that conversation going, and we can speak truth to power in a way that makes people uncomfortable. We can take the greatness from the systems as we know them or we have known them, and we can co-create new systems together. We can influence change at the systems level, and we can focus in our own unique, special way. It starts at the top and it starts on the ground with everyone. I just want to say thank you. Thank you from my ancestors to yours. Thank you from me to you. Thank you from my unborn descendants to yours, making that intergenerational connection and reminding us of the responsibility that we have for those that have come before us as sacred stewards, and those 7 generations to come, and the responsibility that we have in the choices that we make today that help to co-create the kind of world that our loved ones are going to exist in. I'm going to close this with a poem to honor women. And it is a poem by Nicole Anise Nash. And Nicole Anise Nash is from the Constance Lake First Nation. I want you to just take these words in as we close in a good way. As We Always Have by Nicole Anise Nash. And she says, we exist not in the shadows of the unknown, but in the light of the possible. We flow, leaving parts of ourselves in the emptiness, but we are not the vessel. We are the spaces between. We are the rivers. We overflow until there is no telling where one of us ends and another begins. We are water. We are movement. We are together, collective, and whole. We fit into roles that do not define us. We know ourselves. We are more. We are earth. We are stars. We cannot be proven or erased. We just are and always will be. That is As We Always Have by Nicole Anise Nash, to close us out in a beautiful way. Thank you, thank you, thank you, and have a glorious, joyful day.